Have you felt desire so overwhelming it scared you? Then the hollow ache no pleasure can fill? Jung warns, that isn't lust at all, it's your shadow calling. You tell yourself it's normal. Everyone has urges, everyone needs release. But every compulsion, every urge, every moment of sexual obsession is really your soul trying to get your attention the only way it knows how. By the end of this video, you'll understand why sexual energy can become creative fire when it's conscious, but spiritual poison when it's compulsive. And most importantly, how to transform that raw energy into the force that could change everything. This isn't about shame. This is about recognizing that your deepest cravings are pointing towards something far more profound than you realize. It's 2 a.m. You're scrolling through your phone. Your rational mind knows this won't end well. It never does. But something deeper pulls you forward, something that feels like desire, but burns like desperation. And this is where the illusion begins. What feels like lust isn't lust at all. Jung would say you're experiencing the shadow wearing a seductive mask. Jung wrote, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate." The shadow is everything about yourself you've rejected or forgotten. When you ignore it, it doesn't disappear. It gets creative. It appears as sexual urges because those urges promise connection without vulnerability, pleasure without presence. Think about when your compulsions are strongest. Is it when you're confident and connected? Or when you're lonely, avoiding something important, disconnected from yourself? The shadow uses lust as a distraction from the real pain underneath. But every time you follow that false promise, you don't just fail to get what you really need, you move further away from it. Your sexual compulsions aren't the problem, they're pointing to the problem. You've become a stranger to yourself. Jung saw libido as psychic energy, not merely sex drive. It's the psychic energy that powers what we're drawn to and capable of creating. This energy is meant to flow into creativity, relationships, purpose. But when it gets trapped in compulsive sexual behavior, instead of creating, you consume. Instead of growing, you shrink. Think of libido like a river. When it flows naturally, it gives life. When you dam it up or channel it the wrong way, it becomes stagnant and starts poisoning everything it touches. Compulsion is creativity turned inward against itself. Every hour spent in sexual compulsion is life force drained from things that could actually fulfill you. This is why people trapped in sexual addiction report feeling creatively dead. They're running their river in the wrong direction. But here's the crucial insight. The intensity of your compulsions is directly proportional to how much unexpressed creative power you have trapped inside. You're not sick, you're just misunderstanding your own energy. Have you ever noticed how sexual urges feel like they're coming from outside of you? Like some external force is pulling your strings? Jung discovered that clusters of emotions and memories can form complexes, semi-autonomous psychological entities that hijack your consciousness. In his work on psychological complexes, Jung revealed complexes behave like independent beings. They are split-off parts of the psyche which can never be eliminated by will. When you're in the grip of sexual compulsion, you're not choosing. You're being chosen by a complex that formed around unmet needs and unprocessed pain. The complex doesn't care about your values or long-term happiness. It seeks relief from the pain it was created to manage. Loneliness, the ache of feeling unseen, the terror of your own emptiness. But here's what the complex doesn't understand. It's trying to heal a wound by repeatedly tearing it open. It's trying to fill a void by making it deeper. The way out isn't fighting with willpower. That strengthens it. The way out is understanding what pain the complex was trying to heal, and healing that pain at its source. Deep within your adult psyche lives a child carrying all your earliest needs and wounds. Jung wrote, "In every adult there lurks a child, an eternal child, something that is always becoming, never completed." This child doesn't want sex. It wants safety. It doesn't want stimulation. It wants to be seen as enough without having to perform or prove anything. Sexual compulsion becomes your misguided attempt to give medicine to a wounded child. But you're treating emotional starvation with empty calories that only make the hunger worse. Strip away your fantasies and notice what's underneath. The need to feel powerful, chosen, wanted without conditions. Those are the cries of a child who learned love had a price tag. If you're a woman watching this, flip the lens. You may meet a driven animus within, opinions, demands, ideals, pushing performance over presence. Ask yourself, what did I need as a child that I'm still trying to get through sexual escape? Jung discovered that every man carries an unconscious feminine aspect he called the anima, representing emotional depth, intuitive connection, the to be rather than constantly do. Jung observed, every man carries within him the eternal image of woman. This image is fundamentally unconscious, an hereditary factor of primordial origin. When you're cut off from this inner feminine, you lose access to tenderness, vulnerability, emotional flow. The anima doesn't disappear. It gets projected onto external women with magnetic intensity. You think you're attracted to her body, but you're actually drawn to parts of yourself you can no longer access. Her softness is your lost capacity for tenderness. Her emotional depth is your buried sensitivity calling you home. This is why sexual obsession feels simultaneously urgent and futile. You're chasing yourself in someone else's form, but no amount of external pursuit can restore what must be integrated within. For women, Jung framed the complementary dynamic as the animus, the inner masculine, also projected until integrated. Here's where it gets darker. There's a point in every addiction where the thing that once brought pleasure stops bringing pleasure. But instead of stopping, you keep doing it anyway. Not for joy, but to avoid feeling nothing at all. What starts as a search for aliveness becomes a rehearsal for death. At first, the stimulation is intense. Your heart races, your mind focuses, the world disappears. But over time, you need more intensity to feel less sensation. The images become more extreme, the frequency increases, the guilt deepens, but the satisfaction keeps diminishing until you're not pursuing pleasure, you're pursuing numbness. Your creativity dries up. Relationships become shallow. Even simple pleasures dull. Your system's tuned to artificial intensity. You become a ghost haunting your own life, going through the motions of living while feeling fundamentally dead inside. But Jung saw this deadening as the dark night of the soul, the necessary descent that precedes rebirth. When you can no longer escape into stimulation, when nothing outside offers relief, you're finally forced to turn inward. And that's where the real work begins. Jung didn't believe in killing desire. He believed in transforming it. The sexual energy that feels destructive when compulsive can become profoundly creative when conscious. But transformation requires what Jung called holding the tension, creating space around the urge without immediately acting or suppressing. Try this when an urge hits. First, name it. Tell yourself, This is the shadow asking for relief. Second, breathe. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Repeat this 6 times. Third, ask yourself, what am I really needing? Contact, rest, meaning, comfort. Fourth, choose one tiny act, text a friend, step outside, journal 3 lines, drink water, stretch. You didn't repress the energy, you redirected it. When the impulse arises, you observe it. You dialogue with it. You ask what it's really seeking underneath the sexual surface. Most of the time, you'll discover something entirely different. Loneliness that needs connection, boredom that needs purpose, fear that needs courage, or sadness that needs to be felt and honored. When you start addressing these underlying needs directly, through creativity, meaningful relationships, spiritual practice, or simply allowing yourself to feel, the compulsive behavior begins losing its grip naturally. The energy that was trapped in the addictive cycle gets freed for genuine creation. You start writing again, building again, dreaming again. The river of libido finds its natural course toward life-giving expression. People notice you're different. You carry yourself with quiet confidence. Your presence has weight because you're no longer leaking energy into false escapes. This is individuation, becoming who you really are by integrating all the scattered pieces of yourself that were seeking reunion through sexual compulsion. The final truth might be the most difficult. The shadow never disappears entirely. A line often attributed to Jung says, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The capacity for compulsion doesn't get deleted, it gets integrated. You'll always need to be conscious of your shadow, to check in with yourself, to course correct before drift becomes fall. But this isn't a burden. When you know your darkness intimately, it can't surprise you. When you understand your patterns, you can interrupt them. When you've made friends with your shadow, it stops being your enemy and becomes your ally. The same psychological depth that made you vulnerable to addiction makes you capable of profound insight. The same energy that once destroyed can become the force that creates. And that force is what individuation ultimately serves, the return to wholeness. Jung believed every human has one task, to become whole, not perfect, whole. Sexual compulsion was never about sex. It was the desperate attempt of a fragmented psyche to feel complete. But completion can't be found in temporary pleasures. It can only be found in patient self-integration. This work requires feeling emotions you've avoided, facing truths you've denied, sitting with emptiness you've been fleeing. But on the other side is extraordinary. Energy flowing toward what you value, relationships based on connection rather than need, creativity from a deep well rather than desperate compensation. When the inner conflict is faced, it stops ruling your fate from the shadows. The awakening you've been searching for has been inside you all along. You just have to be brave enough to look. You think it's lust, but it's actually your shadow calling you home. The question is, are you finally ready to answer? Subscribe if you're ready to face your shadow. And in the comments, share what your shadow has been disguising as lust. What real need has been hiding underneath your compulsions? The journey back to yourself begins with one honest moment. This could be yours,